Bill, can you state your name and the office that you're running for?
Hi, my name's Bill Brandt. I'm running for Justice of the Peace in Tarrant County, Precinct 3, which is Grapevine, Southlake, Colleyville, Hurst, Euless, Bedford, a little bit of North Richland Hills, a little bit of none of Watauga, a little bit of Roanoke, a little bit of Hazlitt, a little bit of Trophy Club, a little bit of North Fort Worth, and all of Keller and Westlake.
Okay, why are you running for this office?
I'm running to restore the office to a position of dignity and integrity to ensure that we have respect for the laws and respect for everybody that comes in the courtroom.
Okay. Describe your qualifications for the office.
My lifetime qualifications for this office include a great deal of leadership experience. I served 30 years in the United States Air Force on active duty and in the reserves. I commanded U.S. forces in Pakistan and in one of our bases in Iraq after we were attacked on 9/11. I was in the Pentagon on 9/11, so I've served in that capacity as well. I have leadership experience at Federal Express as a captain, as an aircrew captain on the Airbus 300 and the Boeing 767. I also have legal experience. I'm a licensed Texas attorney and have a small practice. I have a great deal of experience in conflict resolution. I served as an in-court mediator in two of the Justice of the Peace courts here in Texas, in Tarrant County and Collin County. And I have a great deal of ability to resolve conflicts, and my intent is to apply the law to the facts and be a just judge that serves with integrity.
Okay. What's the proper role of government?
The proper role of government is, it really depends tremendously on the level of government. The federal government has certain constitutional duties. Our Constitution was a document that enabled the government to do a certain set of things. Those things are properly defined in Article 3, Section 8. And we have to have a government that's capable of doing those things so that we can have a country. State governments have all of the other powers unless they're expressly reserved to the people. And of course, I'm more of a natural law person rather than a positive law person, and that's a distinction that is a little bit arcane legal things for people like lawyers, but many philosophers understand the difference between natural law and positive law. The easiest difference is that in our Constitution, in our Declaration, we start with all men are created equal. And that is an idea that comes from natural law. On the other hand, Mao said political power comes out of the barrel of a gun. That's an example of positive law, and I tend to be a natural law person. The role of governments at more local levels, say in the court system, is properly to adjudicate legitimate disputes between people who can't settle their own problems. One of the things that I really enjoyed as a mediator was helping settle those problems in a very economical and timely way, economical with respect to both money and economical with respect to the litigant's time. So properly adjudicating disputes where the parties can't solve their differences. And then of course there's the criminal courts where we're trying to restore an imbalance in justice. And that's certainly a more challenging role. The Justice of the Peace Court has a limited role in the criminal system, adjudicating Class C misdemeanors, and those are misdemeanors for which no jail time can be assessed. I believe those are proper roles of government.
When and for what reason should state or local government be allowed to seize private property under eminent domain?
This has to do with the nature of what is required for the good of the public, and we've gotten quite a ways from this idea with modern government. I don't know if anyone is familiar with. I'm sure you're familiar with the Kelo decision, which as a judicial candidate, we're not supposed to get deep into policy, so I'm not going to speak directly about the Kelo decision, but I can say generally the idea that we can use eminent domain to take a piece of land and turn it over to a developer so that the developer can generate revenue, and that increased generation of revenue will be more money in the tax coffers for the taxing entity. That is not the founder's understanding of general welfare. That it ends up being more money in the government's pocket, but it does not comport with an originalist or a natural law understanding of the general welfare, and I disagree with that use of eminent domain.
Is Texas in need of civil asset forfeiture reform?
I believe so. Quite frankly, this is an area that I'm not terribly familiar with, and I think I've read cases where there was gross abuse of civil asset forfeiture in a variety of jurisdictions. I'm a Christian, and I believe in original sin, which means that all have fallen short, and that includes even sometimes police officers and prosecutors. There have been a number of gross abuses of prosecutorial power in other jurisdictions, and I think we're experiencing some of those here in Texas with regard to some of the oppression in our senior political people. I know that Governor Perry was so assaulted. I know that the former majority leader of the House was so assaulted. And that is an abuse of the prosecutor's power, because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and so people make mistakes, they get entrenched in those mistakes, and if you incentivize civil officials to fund police departments by civil asset forfeiture, you're opening up a can of worms that is extremely dangerous. And so once again, this is not an area that I can cite chapter and verse on, because this is not my area of the law, but I think generally civil asset forfeiture is a dangerous thing, and you must be very careful and watchful over it.
What is your position on marriage rights?
I want to ask you to clarify what do you specifically mean by marriage rights?
As a JP, you're going to be doing same-sex weddings. Give me your ideas as far as what you believe a fundamental basis for a marriage is, whether it's a contract between government, just generally speaking.
I think generally, marriage existed before governments. Marriage existed as sort of the natural law state of a man and a woman. It is the basis for bringing children into the world. It is the basis for civilizing those children. It is the basis for, in many ways, civilizing men. And I think that generally, strong families make strong communities, make strong countries. All that being said, in Texas, because of the Supreme Court decision of Obergefell, Texas recognizes same-sex marriage. We're going to recognize same-sex marriage, and anybody that wants to get married in a same-sex marriage ceremony certainly have an opportunity to do that. I think generally the state recognition of this marriage is part of the sort of contractization of marriage. It has moved to be a very weak contract in modern society. The joke is you can get married, but if you sign up for a cable system or a direct TV or something, you're gonna have a hard time getting out of it before the end of the period. Whereas if you sign up for a marriage, you can get out of it. It is contract-ish, but it's not governed under the property code. It's not governed under business code. It's governed under the Texas Family Code. And quite frankly, I'm not a family law guy. My parents were divorced when I was in 6th grade, and I have no interest in family law in any great depth. I've been married for 40 years and 3 months and coming up on 5 days. So that's my view of marriage.
Do you intend to perform same-sex weddings?
If someone comes in my court and demands to be served in that way, then I'm going to serve the public.
What are the top 3 issues for your campaign?
The top issue is restoring the court. I think we must restore that court to a position of integrity, and I think the next issue is modernization and efficient administration. I'm a big fan of mediation in appropriate civil cases. Not every type of civil case is appropriate for mediation, and not every civil case of the type that's appropriate for mediation is ripe for mediation. So you have to be very judicious about who you offer mediation to. But I think that we can do that in JP3 and help serve the public by reducing their cost, reducing their time, and giving them a speedier, more efficient administration of justice. The last element after restoring the court and after improving efficiency with an item like a modernization, an item like a mediation, would be to introduce e-filing and help in that way to reduce the hassle of filing paperwork with the JP court.
Describe your political experience, any experience you have as an election volunteer, staffer, candidate, or office holder. Include names of any candidates or office holders for whom you've worked for or volunteered.
I was a senatorial district member in 1986. It was my first in-person election after I got off active duty. And I went to the senatorial district convention, and it was a great experience. Learned a lot, met a lot of people. Over the course of the next few years, I was involved in several campaigns for mayor in South Lake and some other minor local officials. In 1998, I challenged an incumbent Texas state representative. It was someone that I felt was doing a very poor job and was not serving us very well. It was District 98. And I worked very hard in that campaign. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I walked a great deal, and we finished with about 28 or 29% of the vote. It was a four-way race, so 36, 30, 29, and one guy had 5 or 6%. And so I was the third one, missed the runoff, but I supported the other challenger, and she beat the incumbent, and that was a good thing. Subsequent to that, I worked on the Ernie Anderson for Congress campaign when Kay Granger was initially running for Congress, and I was the chief of staff of that campaign. And Ernie was a good guy. He was not as hardworking as I was, but he was a good man, and I think he would have been a good congressman. We knew we were fighting an uphill fight at the time, but our objective was to get candidate Granger to commit to being pro-life, to commit to being conservative, and she never talked about being conservative until we pushed her, and then she said she was a common sense conservative. So sometimes you run just to push the candidate that's going to win a little further to the right, and so we did that. Subsequent to that, I deployed twice. I was very active in military affairs. I continue to be somewhat active in the South Lake, and subsequently chaired the Dragons for Fiscal Responsibility campaign in 2012. We defeated a tax increase in the local election, and I've been active in several in just at a low level in several campaigns. Those are the leadership roles I've taken.
Okay. Any last words you'd like to say to the voters?
I have 10 grandchildren. Our future matters to me in a very real way, and those children and your grandchildren are the reason that we want to preserve American as the exceptional country that it has been into the future. I ask for your support. I'd love it if you could take a look at BillBrandtJP3.com. Brandt is spelled B-R-A-N-D-T. I'm the bottom name on the ballot, and I look forward to your support. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.